this border war. Fans called it Moonshine Throwdown. I think that's the best rivalry name, an unofficial name, but the best rivalry name I've come across.
Yeah, unofficial that should become official soon enough.
Embrace it.
5 receivers at Duncan's disposal. Duncan stepping up. Hit! Ball is loose!
Big call here.
Marshall thinks they have it. And the Herd do!
Here's the kickoff from Amaretto Curry to the Hilltoppers, and we are underway. And a fake reverse on the kick return. And here comes Townsend down the left sideline. What a way to start it for Western Kentucky on the road. And it is an opening touchdown return. And just like that, the Hilltoppers strike first.
Justin Rohrwasser to try to win it for Marshall from 53 yards out. It's got the leg. It is good! And the perfect season continues for Justin Rohrwasser.
Goes for 2. Going for the win. Western Kentucky going for the victory. Rolling to his right. Quick strike. And they did it! Western Kentucky has ended the perfect season into the hands of Willie McNeil. A shocker here in West Virginia. And it is over for Marshall. They end the regular season 11-1.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Throwdown podcast. A little late in the week to be getting things going, but hey, it is what it is. I got Steven here with me. We're going to recap if you're a Western fan, it was not a great game, but if you are just a football fan, that UTSA Western Kentucky game was a great game. It's a shame that somebody had to come out on the short end of the stick of that one because it was an exciting game all the way through. But unfortunately, Western came out on the wrong side of that one. But before we get into that, follow us on Twitter at MoonshineTD and follow the podcast at MSTD_podcast on Twitter. And of course, you can download, subscribe, rate, whatever you want to do to the podcast on just about every major podcast platform out there. Just pick one. Of course, go follow the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast YouTube channel. If you ever miss an episode or one gets pulled off of the recent posts of episodes, all of them are over there on the YouTube channel. So if you ever, like I said, if you ever lose track of one, they're all over there on the channel. So subscribe there and hit the bell notification thing, and you'll never miss when one gets posted. But let's get back to business, Steve. It's Western Kentucky and UTSA, a game that I felt really good about. I knew that Western was going to be able to score on UTSA. What I didn't see coming was a career day for UTSA quarterback Frank Harris. And by God, they needed every last yard he threw, every last accolade and personal best he was able to get in that game. They needed in order to get that win. The final score, UTSA 52, Western 46, dropping the Tops to 1-4 on the season, 0-1 in conference, and UTSA remains unbeaten. Outside of that, though, man, the numbers are really, really surprising. Western sweeping 3 of the 4 major indicators that we always talk about and getting a push in turnovers. So it would lead you to believe that this game would have gone the other way, but I'll talk about that turnover thing. I'll put a star beside that because, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Western, they really, really outgained UTSA in this game. 670 yards of offense for the Tops, 564 yards for UTSA, but better than 100 yards better of offense for the Tops. Pretty amazing. Time of possession, man, it can't get much closer. 30 minutes, 4 seconds for Western, 29 minutes, 56 seconds for UTSA. First downs were pretty tight, 35-32 in favor of Western. Now on the books, officially, it's turnovers 2 for Western, 2 for UTSA. But really, it's more like 1 for UTSA and 2 for Western because, yes, officially, Frank Harris throws an interception, but they force a fumble on the interception, so they get the ball right back. So that's why I say it's really UTSA 1, Western 2. And I guess if you want to talk about the difference in the game, I guess that's the difference in the game. One turnover. I mentioned before that UTSA quarterback Frank Harris had a career day and that UTSA needed every bit of it to get that win, and they did. He threw for 349 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had a receiving touchdown, and he's the one that caused the forced fumble on the interception he threw. So if he doesn't play the best game of his career, UTSA most likely takes a L in this game. Sincere McCormick had the day you might think he would have. He went over 100 yards, but he really wasn't the huge factor that I thought he might be. This was like the Frank Harris show. So if he doesn't have this career day, Western Kentucky gets this win. It's just unfortunate that we have to, talk about another loss. Steve, that's 4 in a row now, and a lot of these coin flip games, none of them have favored Western Kentucky. We'll preview this coming week's game against Old Dominion, where I think a lot of that's going to come to an abrupt halt as far as the losing goes. But for right now, we got to talk about UTSA. You were at the game. We're going to talk stats and team leaders for the Tops here in a second. But, like I said before, this was just a great game. It just sucks to be a Western fan and be on the losing end of that. Because if you talk about the score being flipped, you would talk about this one being probably one of your favorite Western games that you were a part of. But you were there. Talk about the atmosphere. Did you get a good turnout as they were hoping to get, like similar to the Indiana game? What was the feeling inside the Houch for this one all the way through, really?
Well, I wish I could say I was there. I was still in Florida, buddy.
Oh, that's right. You were on vacation. I forgot. You were closer to me.
Yeah, I was still down in the greater Orlando area for this game, so I didn't get to attend. I did speak to a few people, asked them how it was. The announced crowd was 15 and some change, 16, I think. So disappointing on the reported numbers. But from what I saw, tailgating looked pretty good. From what I heard, the atmosphere was still pretty good. For arguably the number one team in the conference coming in. But yeah, just a shootout battle of a game. The Tops kind of showed a little bit of the run game that we haven't seen all season. Part of that was game flow. Part of that was scheme. They were still playing from behind most of that game. It seemed like it always was stretched out to 11 or 14, then closed back down to, 3. But they just never could get any closer. Once they fell behind, they kind of stayed behind. They were in the lead there for a little while, going back and forth. But it was nice to see the run game get going. Bailey Zappi did what he does. I mean, just throwing the ball all over the place. Jared Stearns did what he does. Ton of catches, ton of yards. Dalvin Smith does what he does. He catches touchdowns. Overall, man, it was a fun game. Like you said, it's a shame that somebody has to lose. But, that 1-4 record it's disheartening because 3 of those games were absolutely winnable. I think the Michigan State game was kind of out of grasp for most of the game. But, the Army, Indiana, and certainly the UTSA game were all winnable games, which kind of came down to a few make-or-break decisions or plays or penalties, whichever way you want to look at it. And we came up on the short side of the stick or the wrong side of the decision or, whatever every time in all 3 games. And unfortunately, we lost. So the 1-4 record looks bad on paper. But I think anyone with, half an ounce of sense in them that can look at our resume and what we've done and who we've played and how tough we've played them, in our future Conference USA games, better not look at 1-4 and say, well, that's a W. Because this team has shown they're going to put up 30-plus points every game. Defense still has to show it can do what it needs to do, but I don't think we're going to play any better offense than we've already played this year. On the opposing side, I don't think, UTSA was pretty good, pretty explosive. Michigan State was pretty good. So, all the goals are still in front of us. If we can win out, that will be tough, obviously. But, it's disheartening, but it's not the end of the world. There's still a lot of W's in this team. And they've got the attitude and resiliency. They're going to keep playing and keep fighting and keep winning.
Yeah, of course they're not going to fold. Actually, looking at the schedule right now, I think Western has a really good chance to rip off about 5 straight wins before one kind of looks like it might be a tougher road to hoe here. I mean, like I said, we're going to preview Old Dominion, but the schedule goes Old Dominion, FIU, Charlotte, Middle Tennessee State, and Rice before you get into FAU and Marshall. So I think that Western will probably be favored in all 5 of those games, even the Charlotte game, who is 4-2 right now. That game's in Bowling Green. So, you got to like the Top's chances at home. It might be a coin flip type game as far as the power index goes, depending on where these teams are when that week rolls around. But I think Western's in a great spot right here to rip off maybe 5 straight wins. And then all of a sudden you're talking about a 6-4 team, But let's talk about the guys, the usual suspects. Bailey Zappi, another monster day, 38 out of 60, 523 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. You mentioned the run game getting going. Adam Cofield, only 9 carries, but he had 65 yards in the game and a touchdown on the ground. That was 7.2 yards per carry. Hopefully something's starting to get going there, because these 30 yards a game leading rushers not really a recipe for success. Jarrett Stearns, another monster day, catch-wise and yardage-wise, really, and touchdown-wise. 16 catches this week to go along with his 17 from the week before. 195 yards this week against UTSA and 2 touchdowns, 12.2 yards per catch. Mitchell, big game. Tinsley, 5 catches, 102 yards and a touchdown, 20.4 yards per catch. Good Lord. Defensively, D'Angelo Malone leads the way for the Toppers, 11 tackles, 7 solo, 1 tackle for loss, and a quarterback hurry. Beanie Bishop, 7 tackles. All 7 of those came solo. Antoine Kincaid, 7 tackles as well. 6 solo, 2 passes defended, and a fumble recovery. Impact plays, though, Steve. This is a very this is disheartening, honestly. When you look at a game that played out like this, and it was a 6-point loss for the Tops, and then one of those things that you can point to is the lack of impact plays for this defense. No sacks in the game, only 3 quarterback hurries. They did manage to get that interception, but immediately turned it right over on the fumble. And the only other real impact play was a fumble recovery. That kind of sucks, because you like to think if you get a couple of extra hits on Harris, you get him down 1 or 2 times throughout the game, maybe break that rhythm up a little bit and things slow down a little bit. So special teams real quick. Narveson 2 of 3, Long of 34, 4-4 on extra points, and Haggerty only 2 punts, but Jiminy Christmas, 122 combined yards, 61-yard average, and a Long of 67. So what comments do you got before I go into these grades and you kind of expound on what you're going to say?
Yeah, first of all, the no sacks and 3 quarterback hurries. I'm not sure how they're getting that stat, because we were chasing Frank Harris all over the yard towards the end of the game.
That's ESPN, man.
Yeah,
unless they're calling them run plays and they're like, all right, well, he's outside the tackle box, so that's a run. It ain't a hurry. I don't know.
Yeah, because we were chasing that man all over. He's that dual threat guy that gives us problems. And once he got outside the edge, he'd scramble and keep plays alive and chuck a ball down the field. And he just had a great game. And, when it came down to Player of the Week honors, I wasn't surprised when he got the nod, because they got the W. I almost was thinking they might do Coves with him and Zappi, because, it was just an instant classic as far as Conference USA games go. The offensive guys, you ran down the stats. Everybody had huge games. There were a few drops there. Josh Stearns had a couple drops late in the game that really stung. Jareth had a drop that really kind of stung on a pivotal 4th down play. But we still, coming down to the end of the game, we're in position to take the lead and possibly win. There were some questionable, 2-point conversion attempts early in the game, which kind of put us at an odd number of how much we were down. And at the end of the game, it could have been the difference between, just kicking a field goal to tie the game versus, having to push a touchdown into the end zone. But you can't look back at that too bad. I think it was still a good game. And, all the plays were there that in front of us. All we had to do was execute. And unfortunately, there was a bad interception. Then talk about special teams. I mean, Narvison missed a 55-yard field goal. You hate to see that, but had the leg for it, just pushed it right. Haggerty, booming his leg, just killing it. And then Beanie Bishop on kickoff returns. We usually don't talk about returns very much, but he was just dealing all night. He just, I guess because he was getting burned on defense so much. I hate to pick on him, but they were picking on him a little bit.
Yeah.
Before they took him out of the game, Western did. But on the kick returns, man, he was just feeling it and just ripping off some good returns, giving us a good starting field position. So, all three phases, I felt really good. I feel like there was more continued growth of the team. But, ultimately it went in the right-hand column. We lost the game. But still, overall, I mean, I was really pleased with the game. It was frustrating to watch. We had just left right at kickoff pretty much, and we're starting to drive home. So I was kind of watching it on my phone. I wasn't driving. I was passenger.
I was waiting on that.
No, I was the passenger. I said, no, you're driving, honey. I'm watching this game. I will be focused and locked in. So fun game. UTSA is a good team. And I can't remember who it is. There's a group on Twitter of Conference USA talking heads that does a power poll. Have you seen it?
I mean, Conference USA Report does one. I don't know if that's the one you're talking about.
It's like eight different school representatives voting. Have you seen that one?
Possibly. I don't know.
But the interesting tidbit I want to make about that is last week we were ranked 6th on this power poll by each of the people, and they do a cumulative score average of where you're voted on. We were ranked 6th last week. This week, UTSA was the number 1 team across the board. Every single representative said UTSA is number 1. And somehow Western dropped from 6th to 8th. I was like, and I tweeted at it. I said, so we just played the number 1 team to the wire and could have won, and we dropped 2 positions. Like I think 2 or 3 of them had us ranked 8th. And I was like, we just played the number 1 team, could have won that game, with the not a dumb mistake, and we're the 8th best team in this league. Record be damned, take the records away. I don't know. I was befuddled,
Yeah. That's kind of head scratching. I really thought you were going to go the other way with it. I thought you were going to say, and somehow we ended up 2nd, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, if not for an amazingly athletic interception, I mean, that ball that's one you might think may get pushed into the end zone. But what an unbelievably athletic play to come up with that interception on Bailey Zappi. But still, just one more house cleaning note. You mentioned Beanie Bishop and the kick return game. 6 of them on the day, 144 combined yards, 24-yard average with a long of 40. So he was doing a pretty good job. You're right. And you also mentioned the going for 2 a couple of times. I don't really, who am I to question what they think is going on? Maybe they thought the scoring was just going to kind of dry up, or they didn't think there was going to be enough possessions remaining in the game to get where they needed to be, and they were trying to keep it at a field goal. I can't say that was a bad decision, but ultimately how the game played out, it left a lot of people questioning why did we, if we didn't go for 2 twice, we would be on par with extra points. We would be tied, or whatever the case may be, or we would just need a field goal. But it is what it is. You can't look back and go, well, we should have done this, should have done that, because you don't know in real time how it's going to play out. But look, let's get some grades and look forward to previewing Old Dominion. So what do you got for the quarterback play against UTSA?
A+.
Rinse and repeat. Yeah, what do you want? 500 yards? I mean, you're getting 500 yards. You want 600 yards? That's about all there is left to get. So, A+. How is my grade, my synopsis 10 times longer than yours? You said A+. Yeah. I said 400 words. Offensively, what do you got for the tops? Again, they rack up 670 total yards of offense, 500 plus in through the air, and possess the ball basically half the game.
Yeah, I mean, you could nitpick a few plays here or there that we didn't execute or we didn't finish on. Even that interception late in the game, we were pushing that ball to Josh Stearns instead of Jared Stearns. That's more of a coaching decision, not our offense. But I guess we'll save that for the coaching grade. But the offense, I mean, you can't ask for anything more. 40, dang near 50 points, 600 plus yards, and just moving the ball against a very good team. So definitely an A+ for the offense as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to be nitpicky. The drops were big. Late game drops were pretty big. Drive extending plays kind of let you down, but still, what more can you ask for? You can't be perfect. Defensively, conversely, I hate to set you up like this is a negative, but we have talked about the lack of impact plays and, also giving up over 550 yards of offense. What do you got for the defense?
I mean, honestly, the way our front played, if this had been a non-mobile quarterback, I think we end up with 3, 4, 5 sacks, because we were in the backfield causing disruption. It just never panned out to, a play that made a big impact. But obviously the defense still gave up 52 points, a lot of yards. And also the UTSA guys, I mean, those first 2 or 3 touchdowns they had were just amazing grabs in the end zone. So you got to give some hats off to those guys for executing. And that number 88 they had was a monster. But obviously the defense did not hold up their end of the bargain. When you get a shootout like that, it was kind of defense optional is what I tweeted. So I'm going to give those guys a C-, and that's probably being a little lenient. You'd like to see more out of them, but that's a very good team. And I'm not sure they see a dynamic offense quarterback like that again this season. So I'm going to give them a C-. It was below average. You'd like to see them just get to average and we win that ball game and a lot more than likely.
Yeah, you're probably right. Of note, you mentioned number 88 for UTSA. I don't know because I don't follow UTSA that closely, but I would like to think that that was probably a career day for him as well. DeCorian Clark, by the way, 7 catches, 160 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. So, I think a lot of guys actually had career highs, individually in that game. And again, if they don't have that, Western wins this game. I said before I get too far off topic, I had to do the preview for this show, if you remember, or for this game by myself. And I asked the question going into this game, is Western Kentucky potentially the best 1-3 team in America? And I didn't say that tongue in cheek. I was being legitimate. Like, if you think about it versus who they've played, what they can do on offense, are they the best 1-3 team in the country? And now I think, are they potentially the best 1-4 team in the country?
Absolutely.
I mean, they're just damn lethal on offense. And if they can get any semblance of slightly above average defense, like you say, they're going to be a really, really tough team to tangle with. Special teams, Steve. Braden Narveson did a really good job, except for being forced into a super long field goal attempt. And Haggerty does what Haggerty does. What do you got for the special teams?
Yeah, I mean, special teams, they held their own. Haggerty had 2 huge bombs. Narveson obviously missed a long field goal, but that's 55-yarder. He had the leg. It just wasn't straight. I think it went pushed right. And then Beanie Bishop, we talked about him, just big impact returns several times. So I give special teams an A. I think they did what they need to do and were supposed to do. And, there were no glaring mistakes. So I'd give those guys an A.
Yeah, fair. Coaching grade, I'm curious to see where you go here because it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag in the sense that it's also more of the same. It's unbelievably productive offense and just a tick below average defense that's keeping you out of the win column. So what do you got? To me, this is very un-Helton characteristic or whatever, however the proper terminology is, because generally he sees a deficiency and he's very quick to change it. And I'm not saying that he's not changing it. We're just not seeing it play out any differently on the field right now. So what do you got for this coaching effort against UTSA?
Well, kind of breaking it down. I mean, offensively, again, we started out slow. Yeah, I don't remember how. I want to say we might have been down 14 early again before we came back and took a lead. I think we were down 14 and scored 21 unanswered, if I'm not mistaken, and took our first lead. But offensively, head scratching while we start so slow. We don't get on the board early. And then, but overall, offensively, I think we game planned well. I think we executed well. It just came down to a few hit or miss plays. It came down to some penalties that were called or not called. And then if you look at the defensive side of the ball, I mean, the boo birds are out on Twitter, on Instagram comments, on Facebook comments. If you look on any, halftime score post or end of the game, final score, sorry, we lost, we tried. Half of the comments are fix your defense, fire your coordinator. And I don't, I'm not that guy. I would never post that. Even during the Sanford years, I was never posting, hey, fire this guy. But obviously there's some question marks there about, this transition from from Clayton White to Mo Crum. Is he the guy? Season 1, he's kind of being held to the fire right now, with the explosive offense and a defense that's not keeping up. And I've compared him to the 2014 team, since the season started. I said, this is kind of what I expect. I think we're going to be in a lot of shootouts, a lot of close games, and that's what we've seen. And that's kind of, right now it's bad. And I would give the defensive coaching, I would give a D minus. Offensive, I would give it A. Mix it up, shake it up, give them a B minus. If you're going to blend that score all together, I'll give them a B minus altogether.
You raise an interesting point, because I'm seeing a lot of what you're seeing too, as far as the chatter around, the defensive philosophy and what fans think it ought to be. Everybody's got their own opinion. And of course, not every fan, but a lot of fans out there have unrealistic expectations. It's like they expect a quarterback sack or a tackle for loss on every single defensive snap. And it's just not that way. But someone asked me particularly, what do I think is the biggest difference since so much was returning? And I seem to think that people have forgotten that Dev Key and Deontay Ruffin are both in the NFL. So you lose two guys from the back end that are in the NFL. And while D'Angelo Malone returns and the majority of this defensive line returns, it was Ruffin, Key, Kincaid in the secondary. And Kincaid was freed up to do so much other stuff because of the way that Key played and the way that Ruffin played. And now those two huge pieces are missing. You don't just Dev Keys don't grow on trees. I mean, that's a terrible rhyme that I didn't. But they don't. I mean, these are special type players. So when they exhaust their eligibility or they choose to, test the NFL waters, it's not like there's just rooms full of them. I mean, these are massively impactful guys that are just not there anymore. And yes, your highly productive defensive coordinator also left. So the amount of turnover, while there's a lot that returned, the amount of turnover from a personnel standpoint and a coaching standpoint is just a lot to ask in year one for it just to be a seamless transition. It's just a lot to ask, guys. I mean, you have to expect some drop off. And we're seeing some drop off, maybe a little bit more than I thought we would see, and maybe a little bit more than a lot of people thought we would see. I'm sure we thought we would see a really dominant defensive line, which I still am befuddled of how they just don't live in the backfield all the time, But it's going to take time. I mean, there's growing pains more often than not when you see big transitions, and Western's just going to have to deal with it. Hopefully they can start, do a little bit better job of reducing point totals for opposite. Who cares if they get 1 billion yards, but if they only get 20 points, that's all you really care about, right? You can give up 1,000 yards on defense, but if you're only giving up 24 points, you're probably going to win some ball games. So the best I can say is you got to tough it out. I mean, you just have to. Overall, what do you got for the Tops against UTSA?
Yeah, a loss and 1-4, opportunity to win and a lose it stings. It definitely stung for the majority of the ride home on Saturday night, and Even still looking back, it still stings to go, man, another one slipped through the cracks. But I'm going to give them a B-, and that's just a big blended average of everything we saw. The only real thing dragging them down is the defense. And part of that's Frank Harris just had an unreal game. He's a good player. He's a good quarterback. And that's a good team. I think both you and I have said rank UTSA
rank them.
Because that's right now, that's a top 25 team. Is it a top 25 overall at the end of the season? I don't know. They could fumble up and lose a couple games in Conference USA. But right now, there's not many undefeated teams left. They are playing very well. People say, well, look who they've beaten. I mean, they beat Illinois, Memphis, and now us. And even us, who's 1-4, is still a pretty good team in the grand overall scheme of things. If you look at like PFF's graded out scores for just team metrics and performances, we're like a top 40 team right now. If you look at that metric, obviously 1-4 is like a number 120 team. But we know we're better than that, and our opponents know that our record does not indicate what you're going to get when you just step on the field with us. So it's tough, that's for sure. It stings. There's some pride and there's some ego, but I like the players' reactions on Twitter and social media, just saying, hey, stick with us because we're still playing, we're still fighting. Don't jump on this train late. If you're not here now, don't jump on in week 8 because those guys know what they're capable of, and they're still getting better. And like you said, the schedule is about to soften up a little bit compared to what they've seen. So there's some W's coming. Get ready.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of W's coming. Mainly coming this week. And look, I would think that a B- is about as high of a grade as you're going to see in a loss because everybody played pretty well. And it's just that defensively, a handful of plays made the difference because if they play just a slight tick better, this goes down as a win. And it's a not just a win, it's a waves through the conference win. It's like, damn, UTSA went into Bowling Green and lost to a 1-win team. Well, no, they lost to a really good 1-win team. But still, yes, please rank UTSA. There are a handful of undefeated teams left in the country. And if I'm not mistaken, UTSA is the only undefeated team not in the top 25. Explain yourself, okay? Yeah. If there's teams in the top 25 with multiple losses, you're going to need to explain yourself. So stick with us on the other side of this break. We got a preview of the Toppers trip up to Norfolk, Virginia to take on Old Dominion, a team that we just previewed that played the Herd this past weekend. So it's the Moonshine Throwdown Podcast.
It's 2nd and 10 from the 40 of UTSA. Zappi across his body. Tinsley is wide open. He waltzes in for the Western Kentucky touchdown.
It's Old Dominion week, Steve. Top's got to go back on the road up to Norfolk in the the 20,118 seat venue that they always sell out, no matter if it's full or not. It's always a sellout at Old Dominion. No, we joke and we kid, but for some reason that number has stuck in my head for a number of years. And if I think the stadium's a little bit bigger now, I think they made those improvements and maybe added a couple thousand seats. So yeah. I don't know, but
it's 22 and some change now.
I thought so, but hell, we're just going to have a little bit of fun at Old Dominion's expense because they don't really have a rival and whatever. Let's just make fun of them a little bit. Old Dominion's 1-5 on the season. It's not going very well for the Monarchs. Power Index does not like them this week. They really like the Tops in an away game. 78.1% chance to win. Tops minus 12.5 as we record, which is in the wee hours of the morning on Thursday. Over under is 67. Is it fair to say pound the over? Can the Tops put 67? I'm not saying that they're going to get a shutout here, but you pound the over here. I mean, I think the Tops might be good for 50 in this one. I'm just saying. Also, Old Dominion 0-2 in conference. The game, of course, going down 10-16 on ESPN3. I got to be honest. I didn't even think that was still a thing. ESPN3. I didn't know that was a thing.
I thought it was ESPN Plus now.
I know, but the ESPN app, I swear, says ESPN3. Whatever. Game 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central. All-time meeting, 5-1. Toppers own the edge. Tops have never lost a game in Norfolk. 3-0. Take that for what it's worth. The only time Old Dominion got a win was in 2018.
3 untitled place.
Oh, yeah. Was that game? It was that game.
Yeah.
That was the previous administration coaching staff. So Tyson Helton is also undefeated against Old Dominion. Of course, the Monarchs sat out last season, did not play at all. So look, we just, listeners of this podcast know that the Monarchs just played the Herd, and I'm sure paid attention to how that game played out. And 20-13, look, Old Dominion's not that great. It just was not working for Marshall. Their offense was broken in that game until literally the final minute. So don't look at that score and go, oh, okay, well, maybe Old Dominion's bringing some defense to the table. No, it's none of that really. I mean, they'll make plays on you, but this was more about Marshall's offense being broken. If you're a Topper fan, your offense is not broken. And even if it is like a C-plus Topper offense, you're still probably going to put up a metric shitload of yards on the Monarchs. So, Steve, I doubt you're making the trip to Norfolk, so you'll probably be watching it on TV like the rest of us peasants. We have to we can't travel all over the country wherever the Toppers are, but that's okay. What do you think about the Monarchs? I mean, they're 1-5. They're not really that good. They do have some guys that can make some plays. They've got a lot of guys that they hit the portal pretty hard. Put it that way. Not as hard as the Tops did, but they hit the portal in some, I hate this term, skill positions. And those guys are pretty good. So what are you thinking about Old Dominion?
I mean, they're going through growing pains of the turnover bug, with players. They're also breaking in a new coaching staff with Ricky Ron there. Who didn't get the coaching games last year because they sat out. I just don't think this is going to be a very pretty or very fun game for them. I don't think they have the firepower to keep up with Western. Yes, smash the over. Yes, take the spread. I think Bailey Zappi can come into this game and play left-handed and probably still put up 300-plus yards. And
Larry Bird in Portland. Here we go.
Yeah, he's like, I'm so bored. I'm playing left-handed. And I think, I hope he doesn't have to throw for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns because I hope that we're up by enough that we put in Zabi or Carson Baker if he's dressed out to play. So I think it should be a turning of the tide and hopefully some swagger coming back and some left-handed column marks going in our favor.
Well, you say you hope you don't have that Zappi doesn't have to throw for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't think he has to. I just think he will. And then he's going to take it easy for the last 3 quarters.
Woof.
No, I know I'm piling on pretty big here on Old Dominion, and I don't mean to, but look, they're just not up to snuff right now. And Ricky Ron's not in an ideal situation with his team not playing any games last year. So he's a second-year coach at Old Dominion, but this is his first season, in live action games, and it's not going well. But to their credit, they do have some athletes. They do have some playmakers. They do have the ability to score some points. They're just not going to score 50 like I think the Toppers have the ability to do. So let's talk about some of these players. Quarterback DJ Mack is a transfer from UCF, 86 out of 167 on the year. How the heck did I not write down his freaking passing yard total? Good Lord, what's wrong with me? This is how it is when you're trying to hurry up and prep late in the evening. 859 yards on the season, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Running back Blake Watson wasn't the leading rusher going into last week, but he came in and played against the Herd and got a career day on the ground. So now he's the team leader in rushing yards, 67 carries, 339 yards, and 1 touchdown. Last week, lit the Herd up for 26 carries, 168 yards. So big playability there from Blake Watson. Tight end you have to look out for is the leading receiver for the Monarchs from a receptions, yardage, and tied for the team lead in touchdowns. That's Zach Koontz, the one-time Penn State commit, who, of course, came over with Ricky Ron since he was the offensive coordinator or quarterbacks coach or something at Penn State before he took the job at Old Dominion. But the thing you got to know about Koontz is he's 6'8", and he's every bit of it. I mean, he was a big target for Old Dominion last week against the Herd. Marshall did a pretty good job of closing him out. They even tried to hit him in that fourth down in overtime that, ultimately fell incomplete, but that was their go-to target. So if that tells you anything, if it's fourth down in overtime and you're looking for a guy to make a play, that's who they threw to. Wide receiver Ali Jennings, transfer from WVU, dangerous wide receiver, caught a touchdown last week, 16 catches, 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, tied with Koontz for the team lead. And converted quarterback, I've got to mention, for the Monarchs, turned wide receiver, Stone Smart. He's only played wide receiver since the beginning of the season, and he's doing a pretty good job. He's only got 12 catches with 117 yards, but he was in position to make a lot of big plays for the Herd. Don't know 100% if he's going to play this week because he left the game injured against Marshall. Don't know if it's major or just something minor, but he's taken to that position really well. So another one to just look out for. All in all, Old Dominion is putting up 345 yards of offense every game. I know that's kind of like, oh, really? We do that in a quarter and a half at Western Kentucky. But, it is what it is. 166 yards through the air, 179 on the ground, and they're scoring 23.7 points per game. Conversely, Western is allowing 38.5 points. I don't think we're going to see 38.5 points by Old Dominion against Western. So that season average will drop a little bit for the tops. I'm going to scoot to defensively because I'm going to get your keys to victory and we'll be able to expound on some of these comments as we go through there. So let's talk about defense. Linebacker Jordan Young leads the way for the Monarchs, 38 tackles, 16 of those solo and 1 sack. Linebacker Ryan Henry, second on the team, 36 tackles, 12 solo. And then a trio of DBs that we're going to spotlight. Trey Harris, the third, 33 tackles, 26 solo, 2 passes defended, and 1 forced fumble. And then safety, Harold Blackman, 33 tackles as well, 10 of those solo and 1 pass defended. Look, on down the team tackle lead list is a guy that we have to spotlight because it's a guy that is super familiar with Topper fans. And it was my oh, really? Had no idea moment last week when they were playing the Herd. Former Hilltopper defensive back Roger Cray. Yeah, he plays for Old Dominion. Had no clue until I heard the announcer say Roger Cray on the tackle last week, and I thought, is that the same Roger Cray? Looked it up. Sure enough, even on the ESPN app, it's still his profile picture in a Hilltopper jersey. So it's definitely the guy. 14 tackles, 10 solo, 1 pass defended, and 1 interception, which he picked up last week. So all in all, impact plays wise, Old Dominion is not great at it. They do have 12 team sacks on the year, but of course, we're 6 games into the season. Only 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 0 defensive touchdowns for the Monarchs. They're okay, but not great. They have the capability of getting some of those impact plays, but they don't live and die by them. Defensively, they're allowing 330 yards per game, 199 through the air. I see that number rising drastically, and 131 on the ground. They're allowing 29.5 points per game, and conversely, Western Kentucky is scoring 40.4 points per game. I just threw a lot of names, numbers, and statistics at you, Steve. So we can talk about some keys to victory. We can talk about what you expect to see. But we got to talk about the matchup. I mean, I see strength on weak. Well, I don't even know if it's strength on weakness. It's I don't know. We'll talk about it. It's definitely offensive strength for Western against defensive weakness for Old Dominion. It's the other game. How does the other matchup go? Offensively for Old Dominion and defensively for Western Kentucky. I don't know. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, I thought it was interesting as you were listing their leading receivers, those 2 or 3 that you touched on, that their stats basically were a Jared Stearns game.
Yeah.
So that's just showing you how good he is. He's insanely efficient and just reliable. We won't hold that one drop against him on fourth down. But I mean, I expect us to start faster this game. I know I've been harping on that since September 3rd that we have to start faster. And I think we're going to have the pedal to the floor because I still feel like this team and the offense has a chip on their shoulder, because if anyone is mad about 4 losses in a row, it's them, because they've all been nail biters. They've all been heartbreakers. They've all been winnable. I just think it may get – I don't want to say ugly. It's not going to be crazy ugly, but I don't think it's going to be in doubt. And I hope Potty Train Tailgate is listening. We're not going to need overtime on our homecoming to beat ODU.
Ew.
So I hope you're listening. I'm adding you right now. Listen, slide in my DMs, hit me on a comment. Because I think this game is going to kind of be the defense getting to flex some muscle, playing against an inferior opponent. I was trying to think of how to put that nicely. Playing against somebody that we can push around, I feel like, finding their groove, getting better, improving. I think the offense is just going to do what they do. I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of plays against ODU. Sorry, but yeah, it's time for a W, and I think this is going to be one that we get and don't leave a doubt about.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're just. You're right. They're an inferior opponent. Now, look, if something catastrophic happens and Western can't win this one, then I think you worry, because Old Dominion I didn't see anything from them last week that made me go, wow, this is actually a pretty good team. Like I said, this was 100% about Marshall beating themselves and their offense not working. And, they would give up a big play. Well, they had some turnover, but so did Old Dominion. But they would give up like the 3rd and 4 30-yard run, stuff like that. So let's get particular. What do you think Western's got to do to cement a win in this game?
Get on the plane. No, I'm just kidding. No,
wait. That when I had to preview this game for Marshall by myself as well, I had one key to victory, and it was hold on to the ball. That was it.
Yeah. I mean, my notes are going to be fairly similar to what they have been, because they've kind of been things that have not been happening. Start fast, score points. I mean, that has to be number one. It's going to be my number one until we come out and jump on somebody 21-0 in the first quarter, because we can do it. I know we can. We don't have to play from behind. We don't have to do it. Zach Kitley, I'm talking to you. 3rd and 4th down. I mean, this has kind of been another kind of defensive Achilles heel. We have to get off the field on 3rd down, or leave them in 3rd and long, 4th and more than a yard or two, where they're going to think about going for it in that 40 to 40 area of the field. So get off the field, hold them to less than 50% on 3rd and 4th down. And then other than that, I mean, keep Zappy clean. Stay healthy. I don't think we're going to have to pull a lot of magic tricks out of the bag for this game. Again, I don't mean to gloss it over. I don't mean to look past them. I don't even know who we play next after them, FIU. I could be wrong there. You right on it off. But I just think this is just a winnable game. And I would like to see us assert the running game more, kind of play some ball control once we do get in the lead. I'm really starting to hedge on the fact that number 33, Kyle Robichaux, I think he's our best running back. I don't know how everybody feels. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about him. But when he gets in the game, more so than Cofield and Whittington and Jones, he just seems to have an extra gear and a faster step and hitting the hole and going. Several good runs against UTSA. So I would love to see kind of his role expanded a little bit. I know Cofield had some tough runs, but a lot of that was from the scheme that UTSA was playing. So I would love to see the run game keep going and not be all pass all the time. And that's all I think we have to do to secure a dub.
Now, I will throw a little bit of props towards Old Dominion in the fact that their run defense played a really good game against Marshall. They bottled up Rasheen Ali really well. 21 carries for Ali, only 77 yards. He didn't find the end zone. We're talking about the nation's leader in touchdowns held out of the end zone. So they did a really good job there. And you would think, well, Marshall played from behind literally the entire game, but they didn't stop running their offense. You wouldn't think that you would see 21 carries from a running back when you're playing from behind the whole game. So that's a strength of Old Dominion. At least it was against the Herd. But fortunately, or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that's not what Western's game is. So you can be really great at stopping the run game. That ain't what they do. So if you're not great at stopping the pass game, very much hope for you. So my number one key to victory is pass, pass, pass. I think we're going to see a lot of it because we've been seeing a lot of it, and we see it every week, and it works. And there is no way that this Old Dominion defense can make enough plays and cover enough guys across this. If Western goes 5 wide, their fifth best defensive back is not better than the fifth wide receiver on the field. It's not. Sorry. Number 2, one thing we did see last week is that Old Dominion was able to pick up some key pass interference penalties against the Herd to keep things going. So that's a key to victory for me for the Tops, is to avoid those costly pass interference plays that they seemed to rely on a little bit to keep things moving. Not a lot, but when they had something going, they would take a shot. So if your guys aren't adept at turning and looking for the ball, we've seen now across the conference that that's going to get called, and it looks like that's something that they try to kind of game plan a couple of times during the course of a game to make happen. Number 3, you're going to have to find a way to neutralize the big 6'8" tight end Koontz. If you don't, he's going to be their go-to guy pretty much all game long. He and Jennings, but if you're 6'8", you can't teach 6'8". So you're going to have to find a way to cover that guy and try to neutralize him as best as you can. And number 4, just don't get flustered. You keep talking about a fast start and coming out and scoring, 2-3 touchdowns and playing from lead. Well, if it doesn't work, we saw that it wasn't working last week for the Herd, and they didn't get flustered. Like, the fan base was flustered, but the players, coaches, they just kind of stuck with it. And it took 59 and a half minutes, but they finally hit the big play to tie the game up. I have no doubt that that's not going to be the same scenario that Western's going to be facing. But if it doesn't really work right away or for a quarter, don't shy away from what you do, because it will eventually work on against this defense. So who's your 200 proof player this week against Old Dominion?
I'm going to go with Bailey Zappi, number 4. Quarterback 1, Conference USA Player of the Week. Yeah, him.
Pencil in the freshly. What was the watch list this week? Davey O'Brien.
Yeah, Davey O'Brien award watch list.
Yeah, I thought so. I'm still going with the combo, because for the last 2 weeks the combo has been unbelievable. So give me the Zappi Stearns combo, supersize number 1. Actually, I guess that would be a number 4. I don't know what number it would be. But yeah, we're 33 receptions in the last 2 games for Jareth Stearns. You mentioned earlier that you were listening to those stats. Let me remind you, the team leader on the season for Old Dominion is Zach Koontz, the tight end. He's got 27 receptions on the year. Stearns has 33 in the last 2 games. Just saying. Score predictions, Steve. What do you got this week for the Tops going to Norfolk?
I'm smashing the over. I'm taking the spread. I'm taking the Tops. 48-28.
Oh, okay. A little bit more giving
Juicy.
Defensively than I am.
Juicy.
But I guess I'm also pounding the over. I'm going to say tapping the over, because what do you got? What's your 60, 70, 76? Oh, yeah, you're pounding the over. I'm tapping the over. But I've got the Tops 50. Give me the 50 spot, 50-20. Old Dominion just didn't impress me last week, even though, whatever. They just didn't. They hit a couple of big plays, and, they were in position to hit a couple of more, but Mac would overthrew the receiver or whatever. So if those hit, it would be a different ball game. But until they can prove that they can hit those consistently, I like them to miss more than they hit. So give me the Tops 50-20, getting off of the losing train and starting the winning streak of at least 5 games before we see what they're really like against the Fighting Willie Taggarts of Florida Atlantic. Final thoughts time, Steve. What do you got before we get out of here this week?
I mean, yeah, just, hopefully I think the fan base is still bought in. I think we're still on board. There's still a lot of football to play. Still, it might take the help of some other teams losing. But, I think all of our goals are still in front of us. If we can win out, we definitely can go to the conference championship game. If we end up losing another one, then you're looking at possibly needing the help of somebody else, trip it up and losing more than one game. So, still think the big picture is good. You have to like what we've done offensively this year. And if you're going to look back and look at 19 points per game last year, now you're looking at 40 points per game this year. It's just so mirror image of 2014, just exactly what we were doing and facing and losing games we should have won, but with an amazing quarterback and offense and, coaching staff and then the defensive side just wasn't holding up their end of the bargain. So still a fun team to watch, even though the losses sting. At the end of the day, we realize it's not the end of the season, unless that streak continues. But I think we're at a good point in the schedule where we knew it was going to soften up a little bit. We knew that first stretch was going to be tough. We even recap or previewing the season, we said we could be looking at worst case, we could be looking at this record. Best case, we thought we'd win maybe 2 of those coin flips and be looking a lot better. But the worst case played out. But it's still a good team, good offense that can score points on anybody. I'm convinced. Put anybody out there, maybe short of Georgia or Alabama, and I still think they would do pretty good offensively and put up 20 plus points. So I think it's still going to be a fun season. I still think a lot of things are in play, and we still could be playing maybe UTSA again, maybe UAB, who knows, come December. So I'm still buckled in and ready to go. We've got some exciting football ahead of us.
Yeah, I tell you what, I tend to agree with you. And here's the biggest indicator for me that the fans are still bought into this season. I have yet to see somebody say wins basketball season. And usually kind of by this time, people are like, man, is basketball season starting yet? Even with a better win-loss record. So 1-4 hasn't deterred a lot of those folks. They're still thinking some things can happen. You got to have this one. You got to have the next one. Those are what Trace was calling the get right games for Marshall was Old Dominion and FIU. Marshall's got them back to back. Western's going to have them now back to back. So these are the get it right games before things start getting a little rougher. You have Charlotte. That's going to be a key game to have a tiebreaker in. Charlotte's leading the Eastern Division right now, 2-0 record in conference. And then you'll have a few more games sprinkled in there. You'll get your rivalry game with Middle Tennessee coming up, which is one that you should absolutely dominate. And before it's really the, Florida Atlantic and Marshall kind of deal, which is who's going to rise out. But I think the key game right now would be getting that head-to-head win over Charlotte. So, but look, I expect a huge win. I expect a really good month of football for Western Kentucky. So if you're still wondering, am I ready to check out now, or am I going to hang with it? Hang with it, because I think a lot of wins are going to start piling up and a lot of points are going to start piling up because the season's going to get a little bit easier for a little while. So, look, let's get the heck out of here. I hope we can get us a big dub and come back and have something positive to talk about instead of saying, man, we were right there with another coin flip. This ain't a coin flip. This is one we all had down as a win. So it's got to be a win. We've kind of been okay with these games up to this point because we thought they could go either way. this is not one anybody thought was going to go either way. This was penciled in as a win by probably every single Western Kentucky fan, media head, anybody. This was a win. You got to have it. So, Steve, take us out of here, and we'll see you next. Well, I guess, yeah, it'll be next week.
Go Tops.
Go Herds. It's a Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Later.